Pepper, come here.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to this Friday with two D's for a double dose of the True Life podcast. I hope everybody's having a beautiful day. We're here with the one and only Adam Lopez, singer, songwriter, producer, performer, cool individual, friend of mine, lifelong friend, Adam Lopez. There goes the neighborhood, my friend.
What's up, George?
Dude, just stoked to be here, man. Where are you coming to? Where are you at these days?
I'm all over the place. Right now I'm in Oceanside, California.
Nice,
No,
man.
no, I take that back. I'm in Carlsbad. What am I saying? I'm in
Okay.
Carlsbad. Yeah, I was in Oceanside this morning.
Nice, man. Stop off at the gosh, I can't think of that little cafe I used to go to. I forgot what it was called. Tons of little great places to eat over there, and Oceanside.
Yeah.
It's changed so much since we were kids.
Yeah, a lot. Like a big section of it around the pier has definitely changed, and then like the neighborhoods are still pretty much the same though, which is kind of cool.
Yeah,
You know, you kind of get back.
I
in
spent
the
a lot
touch
of
a little
time.
bit.
Yeah, you got to, man. What are you playing any gigs over there in Oceanside, San Diego area?
I've played a few with a friend's band, just sitting in playing guitar, but nothing on my own calendar really until like in July. But it's all Northern California.
Yeah. I kind of have an affinity for Northern California. My wife was born in she wasn't born in Santa Rosa, but her family lives in Santa Rosa, and I've been up there a bunch to visit. It's so beautiful. It's such a more mellow, kickback part of California.
Yeah, it's. I feel like it's a different thing altogether, and I love it. Like I'm super drawn to certain areas up there where like I feel like that's where I want to get old. You know. If I ever get old, that would be a cool place to do it. I don't think I'm gonna get old.
Yeah. Yeah, I heard if you never grow old, you never slow down. I think it was Tom Petty who said that.
Yeah, I was just thinking of Jay Adams. Like you don't stop skateboarding because you get old. You get old because you stop skateboarding. So I'm on a pretty beat up body, but I still feel good. I still skate almost every day.
I'm surprised that you haven't mounted a tracker truck to your guitar. Man. So what, dude, you got a brand new album coming out, man? Or a new tour, right? Or is it both of them?
I've got two albums that nobody's heard that I've recorded in the last like year. And I put a couple of the scratch tracks up on my website like last week. So there's like 3 songs up there if people want to hear them. But I've got 2 full records that are like, I don't know, it's probably 2 dozen songs, maybe 2 dozen new songs that no one's heard. And I just started booking road dates starting like the second week of July. I've already got like 3 or 4 dates, you know, in the second week of July, I think. But I don't really have any plan. Like I don't have a goal or any plans or anything. I just started, you know, because I kind of dipped out for a little bit and was just on vacation for like 3 years. And then I let a couple people know, like, hey, I think I want to go back to work. And yeah, I mean, I've as a sideman, and I've played a couple of solo gigs, but in the last like 2 months of kind of putting myself back out there, I've probably played like, I don't know, 20 gigs or something in the last like 2 months.
What is it? Have you noticed a difference in the world of performing or songwriting or art since COVID happened to now?
Well, I guess the last time we talked was like it had just become a real thing.
Yeah.
Like we were in it. Things were closed down, but it had just started, and so honestly, it doesn't really feel any different now. I think people are stoked just to be back, able to do what they want to do, and there's no real hang-ups anymore. Like every once in a while I'll see or hear chatter in the background with somebody that's like, you know, a little cautious or whatever, but not so much like it shows, you know. It pretty much just seems back to normal. I think the real difference is people are just like a little more grateful and a little more friendly. You know, they're having more fun.
Yeah. Yeah, I think on some level I was kind of thinking like it shaved off the callousness of being around all the time. And it's not a really good way to put it, but you know, whenever you go into like a deprivation tank, you come out and the colors are a little brighter, the sound's a little crisper. And it seems like we were cooped up for so long that you know the appreciation for music or live performance would be at more of a fever pitch. And you know, as I was thinking that as a consumer of content, I was just wondering, like, what about performing? Like, can you kind of see that in the crowds when you're performing?
Yeah, I think you're right. Like, it's a little more. People are always having fun, but I feel like it's a little more relaxed fun in the sense that like there's just like that little reminder of gratitude for something that maybe, you know, some people might have taken for granted before, or even to the point of entitlement, like they were owed the experience that they were used to having. And I don't necessarily disagree with that, but like that situation really, I think, just kind of helped people kind of get their perspectives a little clearer on certain things.
Yeah. So this brings up an interesting idea. When we think about perspectives, like one of the things I admire a lot about you, Adam, I think you're a really cool person. I really admire your authenticity. I admire your creative ability, and I admire your fortitude to do what you love to do. And that's really inspiring to me. And I'm curious, as someone who has created for a long time, do you feel like the material, the content, and that what you're creating is maturing and changing now that you're a little bit older? Or like how has that changed? Can you see your change in your music, and what does that look like?
It's definitely changing. I think it's just evolving, and I'm getting better at realizing the process of getting it from like an idea to actually being a song or a guitar part or whatever it is. I'm just getting better at translating those ideas. I don't think I've changed all that much as far as the things that I've strived for and the type of person that I want to be. I'm just getting better at doing it because I've been practicing longer, you know?
Yeah.
So yeah, like this, it's changed in the quality. I feel like it's changed in the like the I'm better at communicating. So you know, those things come across. I think they're just better all around. But I don't think what I'm doing has changed so much. It's just becoming more clear.
I like that. That's a good way to see it. When I was listening to you off of Tremont Street over there, and I was listening to the lyrics of that new song, "No one dies of old age." What is the track? "No one dies of old age anymore."
Yes.
Or like that to me is a song of someone who knows how to tell a story. And I don't think that we as people, especially men, like we don't really know how to tell a story until we've lived a life that's full of a little bit of tragedy, a little bit of hope, a little bit of promise, a little bit of disappointment, a little bit of inspiration. But like, I think that when I start to hear like the new tracks come out, I'm like, oh shit, dude, Adam's fucking got this thing figured out, man. The stories are starting to be palpable. Like I can kind of see the stories taking place, man.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. That's not like, I feel like that's not for me to decide. Like I can just do what I do.
Right.
And when I feel it's ready to share, I share it. And then at that point, it doesn't matter what I think of it anymore. It's like, it's not, you know, it's not for me once I set it free. And so I'm glad that that's something that you get out of it. And I hope other people do too, because I feel like there's, like one of the things I've tried to work on is like, none of my songs are about people, specific experiences, or like specific moments. They're like culminations of an idea. And then I know people, and I've had multiple experiences that kind of fit that idea. And so those songs are like tapestries of all the different things that focus around whatever that idea or subject matter is. But if they were so specific, then they would just be for me. And you wouldn't relate to it because you weren't there when that thing happened to me or that person crossed my path. So hopefully the material's more broad, but relatable. I hope. I don't know.
No, it's interesting. I'm always fascinated to talk to people and understand the way in which they create things. I sometimes when I try to create content, whether it's a podcast or if I'm making like a video or something like that, I see it as a similar way where I want the audience that's paying attention to be entertained in a way, but the only way I can do it is by trying to find things that I think are really cool and then putting them out there and hoping that like whatever it grabbed in me grabs someone else. And so like when you're creating sort of with a broad net and casting it out there, it's an interesting way to look at it, or the way, I think the word you used was like a tapestry to find ways for people to identify with it. But it's interesting because you have a whole different mode of, sometimes you're in a studio, sometimes you're in a live performance, sometimes you're writing a song based on this. Like, I think that you have a bigger range of performing, and that allows you to see different modalities like that. Does that sound accurate?
Yeah, I think so, because there was a time where like I was just known as a guitar player for other people. And so that I expressed myself differently doing that than I would in like subject matter of writing a song that has lyrics. So I think it all kind of blends itself. All those different kind of areas of work that I've done or do kind of find their way into the songs that I write, that I share with people. It's all part of the recipe, I guess.
Yeah, I like the idea of the recipe. Sometimes I see it as like playing all the positions on a team. Remember when you're little and you would play soccer, and sometimes you play defense, sometimes you were a forward. But it just seems like in life, hopefully we all have the courage to strike out and try different positions instead of just being relegated to the sweeper or just being relegated to a full stop, or back, or, it's good to do that. And you do get an interesting perspective, like seeing the crowd from a guitar player's point of view versus seeing the crowd from the writer's point of view or the drummer's point of view or the lead singer's point of view. It's interesting how those positions may seem similar if you're in the crowd, but if you're up on the stage, man, they're totally different.
Yeah. I like, there's most of my work is just as strictly as a musician has been in like more country area of music. And so like country bands, you got guitars and drums and fiddles and bass and steel guitars, acoustic guitars, electric guitars. And there's definitely like the running jokes about certain instrument personality types,
I don't know. What are those?
I think that's probably going to get us in trouble, but it's funny because a lot of times it's true, like you kind of start to recognize like it's not like all musicians are musicians. There's like personality types and different backgrounds that gravitate towards playing certain instruments. I don't have any proof of it, but I feel like I've seen it plenty. I've worked with a lot of people.
Yeah.
And as a songwriter, as a songwriter, that's kind of my job, is to be, uh, is the study of people and their surroundings. You know, so I think I have an inclination towards doing that without even trying to do that, and just kind of people watching from afar.
That's okay. You got to unpack that for me a little bit. Like, what does that mean? Like, I guess a songwriter is a storyteller, and as a storyteller, you got to be familiar with the lead character. You got to be familiar with stories and how to tell them, and archetypes and people. So,
Yeah,
like,
but it's like you also have to like be able to relate to people too,
right.
and that's probably the most difficult part for me. Is like being. I'm good at relating to people. I think I understand people very well, but I'm also like kind of introverted, and I kind of don't put myself out there on like a personal social level with just anybody. But you have to, if you really want to. You can only understand or um, kind of observe only. You can only observe and understand so much from afar. Like you really got to get in the mix. You know, that might be why a lot of my contemporaries or like the people that inspired me, um, depended on substances to open them up.
Yeah,
So,
that makes a lot of sense. I could see that. Do you think that on some level, performing or writing those songs allows you to be the extrovert? Like it allows you to participate instead of being introverted?
yeah, it's that, or sometimes I feel like it's forced me to step out of my shell, and my my fear or hesitance of doing that um, was only outweighed by the love of making music, right? So like, and also feeding myself. That's how I make a living,
Yeah.
right? So at some point, if I wanted to make a living doing something I loved, I had to, there was a compromise that had to be made, and that was one of them. There's probably a few compromises, but that was one of them. You know.
There's something like so romantic to me about being able to make a living doing something you love. And I think it's so powerful to me because for a long time in my life, I just I caved into the idea that I had to do this thing to make money instead of doing something I loved and taking care of for that way.
Right.
But like I see you as like that's another reason why I hold you in such high regard is that you've always been able to follow these things you love, man. And it seems to me that with that sort of authenticity, with that sort of path, comes a level of self-love that most people don't get, man.
Yeah, I mean, it's a little easier now at this age to kind of like look back
Right.
and see that, but at the time, um, like I grew up in a shitty neighborhood around a bunch of shitty people. Like I figured, like, what did I really have to lose by just doing what I figured? Like if I was halfway intelligent and had a good work ethic, then why couldn't I put it to something I liked and still be at the level that I was like starting from at the very least? And for whatever like judgment I give to that situation as a kid, like
Yeah.
we survived, we were okay. We made it out. So like, why couldn't I just take all the lessons that I learned about hard work and educating yourself and being self-aware and just apply it to something I liked? And I figured at the very least I could still live in the same neighborhood, but at least I wouldn't wake up at sunrise to go dig a ditch or whatever else, whatever job that was out there, that would have kept me in the same place. you know
Yeah, I know that all too well, man. It's it seems to me too do you remember what your first sort of relationship with music was like? You know what I mean by that? Like,
Uh,
what was it that really, really grabbed you?
as far as like the like actual music itself, like what music was it?
Yeah, we can start there.
Um, yeah, I mean it was just like that early like '50s rock and roll, Chuck Berry, Elvis, Buddy Holly, all that kind of stuff. Little Richard was a big one.
Mm.
Um, I always equate the first time I heard and saw Little Richard, I got it was like the same. It was the same feeling in my gut the first time I saw Playboy when I was like 7 years old. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I know that feeling.
Like this is amazing, but I don't think I'm supposed to be seeing this.
Oh,
And
it's beautiful.
that's how I like that's how I try to convey to people, like, because it's like getting shocked, like
Yeah.
it's like literally sticking your finger in a socket and getting zapped.
Can you like if you were to see a similar clip of him today, would there still be reminiscence of that feeling?
Oh yeah, like I still, I'm a one of the things, like when it comes to like the more practical lessons of being like a professional musician,
Mm-hmm.
uh, and people ask me questions about it all the time, and one of the things I make them understand is like you really have to be a musicologist. You got to know your shit. You got to know your history. Um, and so I practice what I preach. So I still go back and watch old videos and listen to old records, and I still hear things and see things you know, that I didn't see the 20,000 other times I watched it or heard it. And so, yeah, a lot of those feelings are still there. Like I can go, I can go back and taste them again for sure.
Yeah, it seems sort of like a boxer would watch old tapes of like heavyweight fights to understand the techniques or understand the performance or understand the conditioning that the other person went through. It seems the same way anybody who's very, you know, I don't want to say religious, but who's someone who's very methodical about being a professional has to go back and learn the lessons from the past, right?
I think so. I mean,
Yeah.
there's plenty of kids right now, like on your Instagram and TikTok feeds, that like, as far as I'm concerned, they have no talent of anything except being popular on TikTok and Instagram. But that's just my opinion. And like, if they're feeding themselves and they enjoy what they do, then maybe I certainly never think like in life in general. I don't believe that everything is like right or wrong, and there's a right way to do things and a wrong. Like there's a bunch of ways to do things, but for me, I I to look myself in the mirror and be like, you're a professional musician, then I feel like I need to know my shit. And if you ask me to teach you or give you advice, I can only give you what I know or what I feel, like my perspective on it, right? But I certainly don't think it's the only way by any means.
Yeah. Yeah. Maybe it's our age, or maybe it's the system we grew up in, or the elders we had around us. But the idea of professionalism, like a lot of language, seems to be evolving in a way. But yeah, I don't know. Maybe it's
Yeah,
because we grew up in the same neighborhood or something like that. I don't know.
yeah, I don't know, but um, it and it's everything should be evolving and changing and
Right.
growing. So that doesn't mean we're gonna like it, right?
Of course not.
So if we feel like it's evolving in a incorrect way or a wrong way,
Right.
that's not necessarily the truth. It's just that we're uncomfortable with it for whatever
Right.
reason. That's our hang up,
Yeah.
you know. So I don't like to answer your question. For me, yeah, I need to be that guy that's a music nerd and knows his history and all that stuff, because it makes me feel better about what I do, and I feel that it makes me better at what I do. Regardless of how I feel about it, it just makes me a better musician. Um, and I have a skill set that Um, a lot of these young up and coming like starlets and want to be like, I don't mean want to be in a
Right. It's a
in a
pejorative.
negative way.
Yeah.
I'm just saying like their goal is to be a famous music star or
Right.
whatever. They can't walk into a studio session and sit down and cut a song that they've never heard before, or necessarily write their own material, or there's a lot of things, or get implement themselves into a 5-piece band that they've never played or rehearsed with, and get on stage and perform for 4 hours and entertain a paying crowd. Like, that's my skill set, and I'm proud of it, and I like it. I enjoy doing it. But those things that I used to define myself as a professional musician aren't the only things that define somebody else as a professional.
Sure. Yeah, if we take that angle a little bit, it kind of does seem like there's a pattern of divorcing fame from talent in some ways. And it probably started happening before we were kids, but yeah, I can see that pattern. I can see that pattern there. It's interesting to think about.
Well, yeah, like that whole ideal is all over like country music. Most of our it's all over pop music. Like all those acts in the 50s and 60s, very few of them wrote their own material.
Right.
And the people that write the material generally make more of the money too. So you've got these people that no one's ever heard of that are professional writers and musicians making more of the money than the people you see on your TV, and nobody knows who they are. Same with studio musicians.
Right.
Now the studio musicians don't necessarily make more of the money unless they're working. They make really good money while they're working, but it's not the type of money where like it's not generational wealth. You know what I mean?
I don't think most people have any idea about this. Like the only way I know about it, I remember one of my mentors telling me that like, he used to say, "Hey George, don't be the guy in the flashy jacket." I'm like, what the hell does that mean? And he goes, "Well, Elton John, he wears a flashy jacket, but there's a guy that writes all this music for him. And that guy can run around, that guy can go do everything, and he has all the money. Elton John has the money, but he's also got the fame and the flashy jacket, so he's hindered in a lot of ways." But that was the first time I started thinking like, oh shit, I didn't realize that this performer is sort of like a puppet in a way. And there's this whole team of people behind him. I guess in my limited view, I'd always thought that, the performer was the person who wrote the song, performed it, did everything. But that's not the case, right?
No, I mean, well, Elton does write his own music, but he doesn't write his own lyrics. And so, because he writes his own music, he probably owns some of his publishing, I would assume. So
Okay.
he's not a horrible example, but like the real example for most people is like Elvis. He never wrote a song that got published in his life, right? Everything he sang that we know of was written by somebody else. And I could name their names, but they would just be sounds. They wouldn't be like, there's no faces to those names. There's very few, So yeah, business is business, but not all business is the same business. So the music business is very unique to itself.
Yeah. Even I kind of see the same thing with like the world we live in. With if you look at some of the complaints of professional athletes, they say, look, our agents are like siphoning everything off. Our coaches are siphoning everything off. And we go out, we do all the work, and we get paid a little bit. And if you think about a performer in the music industry that's just going out and going on tour, I can even think of like Milli Vanilli. Like those guys didn't do anything. They just went out there and lip synced everything. But it's interesting to look behind the scenes and realize that, whoa, these are a lot of cardboard cutouts.
Yeah, and I don't know. Well, I guess I take that back. I do know a little bit about it, like present day, how that looks. Okay. But it still exists, but I mean it's always kind of been that way pre like 1964. Like all those artists, the musicians on the records were not in the band, or even the people in the band making the records. A lot of times there was studio musicians recorded those tracks, and then the band went out and played them live. You know, they had to learn them and go out and play. And so they're, you know, now in like kind of the modern age with like backing tracks and that kind of thing, I think the ability to have your cardboard cutouts that are also popular in the internet has actually increased quite a bit. So you've got
Really?
you've got more Milli Vanillis that can hide behind a lot more technology and still be basically, you know, they're brands now. They're not artists. At least those types. There's plenty of legit, really talented artists making really good music out there that you're not going to hear or see on TV, you know, or hear on the radio. But I feel like, yeah, the cardboard cutout, like that type of act could actually probably get a lot further these days with little effort.
Man, that kind of makes me sad a little bit, because I kind of was hoping that this new wave of the creator economy was, you know, allowing artists to shine through. But as I start looking through, what do you think?
Well, I was gonna say, like, that's why I'll just go back on the road, because I can draw a crowd on a street corner with an acoustic guitar, and I'm not hiding behind anything, and there's not even an amplifier or a microphone. Like the people that you're talking about, they can't do that.
Yeah.
You know, they can't. Like they can't, without all those things to hide behind, they can't feed themselves. And so there's a couple things there. Like for me, like I take a lot of those cues from like old blues artists from like the 30s and the 20s, where all they did was travel around their region or the country with the guitar and a suitcase, and they set up on street corners, and that's how they made their living. And that was completely a legit way to survive, you know. And you gotta be the real deal to do that. Those people, you know, eventually they made records, but they were doing that with there was no record to promote or no tour announcement, none of that. They were just out working, you know. And that's kind of where I'm going back to, partially because of what you're talking about, is like all those other types, those cardboard cutout types, in this world of like digital music and internet and all this stuff. If I'm in that world with them, then I'm competing with them.
Right.
And the strengths of my skill set can't really compete with or nor do I want to compete with them. I don't want to spend more time getting better at editing videos on Instagram, or like, it's just not, there's nothing wrong with it. It's just not what I do. And even like recording records is like, I've never made a good record, because I just, you know, like I've made records with my songs that were good songs, but I've never really made like a great record that's that I feel like is a real representation of what I do. Like I've never accomplished that. And part of it is just because I don't really give a shit. Like I wanted to make good records with good songs, and the playing was good, and there, you know, everything's in tune and it sounds good. And but a lot of them were done like really quick and fat. Like the whole process that somebody might spend a couple years on was done in a weekend, and they're good products because I had talented people to work with and all this stuff. But like really what I was creating was like mementos, merch, things to people to take home, you know, as like a little token of an experience they had at a concert or whatever. But but I can honestly say, like, I'm not ashamed of any of those records, but I've never made a great record that I know I'm capable of making. And part of the reason I just don't care is like I don't I don't feel like music. I don't feel like any of my songs should ever be captured and then become like the gospel. Like that's what that one song is supposed to sound like. To me, like I get more out of playing it for you in person and creating it for like painting the picture while you're watching as opposed to painting a picture at home and selling it to you. If that makes any sense, because like the act of creating is what really kind of like does it for me. That's what satisfies me. So going back to like your first question, tell me about like what new record, new tour, what's going on. Like I'm not really trying to make a new record because I just don't care. You know, what I'd rather do is how about you just book me on a show and then you bring a recorder and you record your own record for yourself. You can have it.
Yeah.
You know,
it's better. Yeah.
Like I'm going to play the same song that I played yesterday, but it's going to sound different today because I'm going to play it different because I feel different because I'm a different person than I was yesterday. You know, I feel like I don't want to record a song. It becomes the definitive version and then I've got to play it that way all the time. Or like, if I don't play it correctly, then it's a failure, you know?
Yeah.
And that goes back to the whole, it goes back to the whole like thing. I don't think things are right or wrong or, you know, good or bad. They just are what they are. And so like, I'd rather have a different experience every day than just try to recreate the same thing every day.
It reminds me of I heard a story once about pictures and how I forgot where I read it or I heard it, but there was people talking about like they hated pictures because it gave, if you took a picture of them and gave it to somebody, it was a perception of them that wasn't really them, and it kind of trapped them in this idea, and then now that image of them, which they may not even like, is out there for everybody to hold on to and hold them up against, you know. And I've never thought about it from that angle that you've said, but yeah, like the whole commercialization of anything we do is but a pale picture of who we really are. It can only trap you in like a one-dimensional way, right?
Yeah, I mean, obviously that's not how I think about music in general, because plenty of people have made plenty of records that I can listen to every day for the rest of my life, you know. But for me, like right now, I just like simplicity, and I like the act of creating more than the stress of performing. Meaning that like I want to play for people. I want to like give them something, but the idea of putting on a performance where like it's got to be tight and it's got to be practiced and rehearsed and it's got to sound impeccable, that I'm not interested in. You know, you're still going to get the best that I can give you at the moment I'm giving it to you, and after doing it for as long as I have, and I think being born with an inclination that I'm doing what I was born to do, it's probably, I would hope you're still going to think it's pretty fucking good. But you know, like the whole way that records are made, especially now, those people took years or countless attempts over every little syllable they sang or every little note they played on their instrument to make it perfect. The chances of them playing it perfect from start to finish in one try, like most people don't have that skill, and it's not the norm to make records that way anymore. It used to be, but now like people can literally piece together their song, like drum hit by drum hit, note by note, syllable by syllable, and technology allows them to tweak it, and move it, and push it, and massage it until it's like perfect on a grid and pitch perfect. And I've had some really good performances in my day that were better than any record I've ever made. But I certainly, like, I'm not in that zone 24/7. So, but like I said, even at my worst, I like to think it's still pretty fucking good.
Yeah.
But that's what interests me more than like trying to make the perfect record. I'd rather go out and just play for you every night on a street corner or in a comfortable venue or in your backyard or whatever, and like share an experience with you as opposed to like recreate and then perform like this scripted thing for you.
It almost seems alien in a way when I think about the level of perfection that can be done. Like I never thought about it that way, but if you really have a fine-tuned ear for something, you could be like, wow, that's way too perfect. It kind of sounds crappy because you know that it wasn't made authentically. You know that it was, okay, someone laid down one chord and they just hit the repeat button and layered it in there.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't even know that was really possible. But as you say it, I'm like, oh yeah, of course. Why wouldn't they do that?
Yeah, for sure. They do it all the time. And it's not, I don't think we have to wait another 50 years, but I don't think anybody's going to be talking about any of those records in 50 years. Like we still talk about, Sgt. Pepper and what, like, Led Zeppelin 3, or like people just are just the stuff a lot, not, and again, not all of it. I could direct you to people that I've worked with that I know personally that make fantastic music, and it's real as anything. But I equate it, and I think we talked about this before. I equate it to like junk food. It's not sustenance. It's gonna maybe keep you alive a little longer, but ultimately it's gonna destroy you. And it's just not. It's not there for the long haul. Like it's not gonna advance the progress of you as a person.
Yeah, it's processed. Here's a box. Here's a flashy label. Get out there, sell it, and try to put as little juice in there as possible and sell as much of it as you can.
Yeah, and there's like a pretty well-known clip of an interview with Frank Zappa, talking about the music business used to be run by people that love music.
Yeah.
And now the music business is just run by people that love money, that are business people, that just, the music business is just another business to them.
Yeah.
And like when I was a kid, I worked for a guy delivering office supplies. And I'm like, why'd you choose office supplies? And he's like, well, it's just business. And I'd rather work for myself and sell office supplies than work for somebody else doing something I don't like. But at least, like, I have my own business, and it's just business. And that's fine when you're selling office supplies, but when you're selling somebody's heart and soul and their art, I don't think that's how it should be done,
Yeah, I think that's a problem, not only in music, but in the world we live in today. And I think you can see the giant hole in our society when we have divorced, everything meaningful and try to put it into a monetary package. We've divorced thought from morality. We've divorced artwork from performance. We've packaged everything, it seems, in a way that can make the most amount of money, and in doing so, we've taken the soul out of it in a way. I feel like we've divorced our soul. We've divorced meaning in some ways, but I don't know. Is that too much to say?
I don't think so. I mean, that's the problem with like I feel like most of the world around us puts value on everything and everybody. And most of the times when they do that, they're talking about monetary value.
Yeah.
Right. So, well, art's great and all, but it doesn't pay your bills. And that's more important. And then they don't think about the void in the person, or in the consciousness or the soul of somebody that art fulfills. They don't even, they don't think on that type of level. And I'm not saying that level's higher or better. It's just a different plane. But then everything becomes about a monetary value, and you're putting it on people, and you're putting it on art, and you're putting it on, that's why we put it on. That's why we have fast food, is we put a monetary value on it. And so cheaper is better, right? It must be, because it's cheaper. Doing a job that adds to the bottom line, which is money, but destroys the earth, or like destroys your soul while you're doing it. Your art is great, but you gotta do this because it pays more. And I don't buy it. I refuse to take part in that.
I love like what you just said about it's like a race to the bottom. We make everything cheaper. But if you just stop for a minute and you go, why would I make my life cheaper? Why would I make what I'm doing cheaper? I should make it better, not cheaper. And if you just step back from it and be like, what the fuck am I doing? I'm going to make my life shittier. And I recently come to a spot in my life. I just walked away. Like, I've been a UPS driver for like 26 years. I just got to a point where like, I can't fucking do this anymore. This sucks, man. I'm never home. My wife's doing everything. I don't see my kid. I fucking hate where I'm at. I fight all the time with the people who claim to be in charge, because what they're doing is just trying to find ways to cheapen what I'm doing. They don't really give a shit about the service. All they care about is money. And so I made a pretty big decision in my life. Like, well, fuck it then. I'm not going to do it anymore. And for the first time in my life, I really felt like, wow, I have been living a shitty life for a while. Guaranteed I did all right. I made some money and I did some things. But as soon as I started living a life worth living, I realized how much my relationships got better with my wife, with my kid, the conversations we've had, the way I feel about myself, the way I interact with my friends. And it's like, whoa, just walking away from the idea of quantifying everything, just walking away from looking at everything as a number, you don't realize how immersed you are in this system that sees everything from a numeristic point of view. And when you do that, you on some level, you're reducing the human experience to a number. And it's so fucking narrow pointed when you do that, man. It's so hard to be your authentic self when all you're looked at is a number.
Yeah. I mean, I'm at a place right now where, like, lately I've been noticing it, like, just having like, for one, I'm not too into small talk, like,
right.
Pleasantries and greetings and shit. That's cool. But like, much beyond that, it's like, I feel like you're not valuing the person in front of you, where you're talking about nothing just for the sake of talking because you can't handle the silence. And so one of the things I'm paying attention to more is, like, when people are talking, what are they talking about, and what are they saying that, like, beyond just like the subject matter of whatever conversation you're having. Like, did they just tell me what they like by telling me a negative? Like, did they have to say something negative to say something positive? Or how many times did, like, monetary values or how much money they saved or how much money they spent come up in a subject that has nothing to do with money, right? So like, I don't mind having financial conversations, but we're bringing those things into conversations about totally different subjects. And to me, like that, I'm not participating in that. Like, to me, that's a red flag of what this conversation is probably going to become if I continue to let myself be part of it. You know, there's like the mentality of I guess like I've heard it the term uses like poor people's mentality, in that even people with millions of dollars have poor people mentality sometimes, which got me thinking like, yeah, that's the that's the person that's like got all these things but like is sick all the time and unhappy, and like the things are not they're not enjoyable because they're only pleasurable, right? Like scratching the itch of pleasure is not real joy. You know, it's super limited, it's super finite, and when that doesn't work, you're looking for the next thing, and that's, you know, I guess those are the types of things where like I just don't need to be having those conversations. Like if we're going to talk about finances because there's like an issue that we're trying to solve, great. But like if we're talking about like somebody we haven't, you know, a mutual friend we haven't seen in 20 years, and one of the first things I hear is like, oh, he's done very well for himself, made $1 million last year. I'm like, okay, great. How is he though? Is he happy? Is he healthy? Like, you know what I mean? And I find I've been running into a lot of those types of conversations coming at me lately, and it's sad to me, but I also know that like it's not my job to be sad for somebody. That's their trip. They're on their path. They need, you know, they need to live their life, and so the lesson for me is like, how do I still be cordial? How do I still be friendly? And how do I maintain my boundaries of like what's acceptable for me without being rude or like dismissive of them? You know what I mean?
I do. I know exactly what you mean.
I just feel like we don't value, because everything's, including people, are getting monetary values, and we don't value them as people with feelings and emotions and traumas, and like we're not really we're a lot of people are saying a lot of words, but they're not really saying anything of value. You know, we're wasting a lot of time.
Yeah. I like the metaphor of scratching the itch of, you know, the pleasurable itch, because it's so superficial. A lot of the things that we have glammed onto, you know, a lot of the modern ideas of what success is are underpinned by a monetary value. But it seems to me that the real wealth is in creating something. You know, there's a sort of spirituality that comes by giving birth to something you love that other people can enjoy. And that is not given the weight that it deserves, whether it's a piece of artwork, whether it's a good conversation, whether it's a sitting in silence with somebody. You know, there's a lot of ways that the things that are really important cannot be monetized. I feel you, man. It's interesting.
Yeah.
And I'm hopeful though that like I see some cracks in the future. I'm hopeful for the world that is emerging. Like, you know, and maybe this is just me wishful thinking, but with all like the shit that's going down, whether it's wars or the monetary system going down, I think that is an old system dying. I think that the younger generation is coming up and being like, these ideals that we were living under they just don't work. No one's happy. Our parents get divorced. There's all this abuse. Like, what are we doing? And I think that maybe that, if we look at where we grew up and we look at some of the stuff that not just us, but all kids and all people coming up, I think that they got to see a life that's not working. And I like to think that we're working towards creating a better future. And whether it's finding your way in music or finding your way in creating something that's your own, I think it's the path, man. Like, what advice like if there's kids coming up, what advice would you give to a younger version of yourself, Adam?
Ooh. Well, I mean, everything you're saying, I see that as a potential for sure. Like, that's well within our grasp, if not more,
Okay.
as far as like rising to like a new level of consciousness.
Yes.
So that, and I guess that's the message to the like younger me is like all of those little, because I've been this way, this kind of curious seeker, I guess I would say, since I was a little kid, like 5, 6 years old. Like, I knew, like, looking at the adults around me, I knew that they were unhappy. I knew that they didn't realize how unhappy they were. And I knew that they thought that's what life was. That's they were content in their unhappiness because they just thought, well, that's what life is, and so we're actually doing okay because if this is what life is supposed to be, then we're good at it. We're good at being unhappy, And a lot of people are. A lot of people
That's disturbing.
Just, like, they're very good at it.
Yeah.
And so I guess the path to educating myself, I've been on it for a long time consciously, like knowing like internally in my gut that there's more to it than this. And the generation that raised me, I don't have to accuse them of doing it wrong for me to change and do it the way I want to do it, that I see as right. It's just the evolution, right? Like, I experienced what I experienced because that's what I needed to experience. But now that, I'm an adult and I'm my own person with my own means of like providing for myself, I'm not reliant on other adults in the sense that I'm at their mercy. We're all relying on each other because we're all from the same source and we're all connected for sure. But it's different when you're, a 15-year-old kid or whatever versus an adult that can provide for themselves. So I would tell that young me to like trust their gut, continue to like look for the answers themselves instead of relying on other people, question everything,
Yeah.
or and not question it in the sense that, like, your parents would tell you don't question my word. Well, there's a difference between questioning their word or their authority and then questioning the lessons they're teaching you. It might be a little gray, but there's definitely like a difference. And so you should question things that your gut tells you should question, and you should find your own answers in your own path, and like and then trust in it.
Yeah, I like that. I think that is something that everybody could do to find a more rewarding and authentic life, is just to listen to that little voice that talks to you. Because I found out, man, that if you don't listen to that voice, it stops talking to you, or it gets real faint, man. But once you start listening to it, all of a sudden, things get a little clearer. And if you start listening to that voice, I think the world around you begins to open up, man. There's this thing that's kind of been floating around my world, Adam, and it's this idea of generational trauma. Like, I've been speaking to a lot of people about it, and I've even seen it in my life where, I've found out, a lot through a lot of giant mushroom trips for me. But like, I've figured out that, whatever battles I don't fix, my kid's gonna have to fix them. And that's given me a lot of courage and a lot of, ability to face things that I normally would have just put off. And I don't know if it's part of being my age, or maybe it's, it's just something that's happening to a lot of people around the world. But what's your take on generational trauma, man? And have you found a way to navigate that in your life, or do you even think it's a thing?
No, I was just talking about this to a friend a week ago.
It's out there, man.
So, like, here's what I said to her. I said, I don't believe in hereditary. Like, when people get sick, or people get diagnosed, or people turn to drugs and alcohol, and they write it off as hereditary, I don't buy it. Those traumas that cause those things do find their way into your being and your DNA for sure. But hereditary really just means you were taught by the people that raised you. Right? So those things are the result of lifestyles going back however many generations it took for it to implement itself in you. But none of us, I don't think any of us, maybe 0.001% of people at the most, or whatever, might be where, like, there's literally a freak of nature accident where this strand of DNA came out flawed. But really, like, the universe and creation doesn't really make that many mistakes, right? So, like, if that's true, then all these things that we can dismiss as hereditary are really just what you were taught, and what your parents were taught, and what their parents were taught, because you were raised by those people. Those people imposed their will and their politics and their religion on you, and what those things are, their definitions. Those people fed you the food that they ate, right? So, like, you're obese, and your parents are obese, and so are your grandparents. That doesn't, you're not doomed. It's not hereditary in the sense that it's in your genes and it's always going to be in your genes, because that would imply that your life has already been mapped out and written for you. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So hereditary is like, it's real, it exists, but you're not bound to it. So therefore, to me, it doesn't really exist. Right? So you're talking about, like, generational traumas. Well, I'm dealing with mine daily, moment by moment, breath by breath, for sure. And every time I feel like I've reached a new level of, like, consciousness, a new one emerges, because it's been there all along, but at the level of consciousness I was at, I couldn't see it. Right? So these things are gonna, maybe one day I'll get to a point and they'll stop showing up. But if I had to guess, I would guess that they'll probably just always be there, and that's okay. They're supposed to be there, and I'm supposed to kind of wade through it and sort it out, so that, I don't have any biological kids, but I have lots of kids that I consider mine, of varying ages. Like, some of them are full-blown adults, but they're my kids in the sense that it's my duty as like a fellow human to do my own work, so that I can lead by example, and hopefully my example's better than the generation before me.
Yeah, I like that idea. I kind of see a similar, like, I've been thinking about this idea of patterns for a while. Like, we live our life according to a pattern, and it's really easy to stay in that pattern if you let it. It's really hard to break a pattern, whether it's a pattern of abuse, a pattern of drinking, or a pattern of living. It doesn't have to be a negative pattern. It could be a positive pattern. But the longer you stay in that pattern, the longer you become callous to what is possible. And if you just shift your pattern a little bit, the whole world can open up to you. And maybe that's what when you talk about things not being hereditary or drinking being something that's a learned behavior, or being obese is a learned behavior. I think that on some level, just getting out of your comfort zone can change that pattern for you, whether it's traveling, whether it's performing at a place when you're scared to perform, or whether it's just doing something that scares you. It's powerful to do that. And I think most people should be forced to do that in a way. And I know that sounds wrong, but maybe that's waking people up. I don't know. What do you think?
Well, like with regards to like, just so we're clear, like the drinking and obesity thing being learned behavior, it most definitely can be hereditary in the sense that you are handed that, and so you're going to be obese and you might be an alcoholic. All I'm saying is you're not destined to die that way because it's hereditary, right? So you can change. So hereditary is not like a death sentence in some regard. So,
I see.
And then the flip side about patterns not having to be negative, you very well could become a person that is carrying on a learned pattern that's very much positive and good in the general sense, but is not positive or contributing to you, the individual, in the current life that you're living. Meaning that like you may have been taught something that's become a pattern that you do on the daily or on the regular, that if you abandon it and started something else, that other thing might be even more beneficial for you, right? And for the life you're living. So therefore that positive thing could be a hindrance at a certain point, because it's taking up the time and energy that you could be spending doing something that you created that's better for you.
Can you give me an example of something like that?
This one might be yes, I can. Because the premise you just set was leading me to a thought of one of the things I also don't believe in is daily routines.
Okay.
So I can think of instances where being taught hard work and being reliable and being somebody that shows up not just on time but early, those are all positive things in like the big picture. Those are all good traits that you should have. But if the person that taught you them in the sense that it becomes a daily routine, in the sense that you have to adhere to certain practices at certain times of the day, every day, therefore every day kind of starts the same way or is framed the same way with only a little deviation in between the tasks, then I would for me consider that not positive, even though I'm doing positive things, because for me, I don't want to need to have to go through a routine to do positive things, because if something happens and my day doesn't look like yesterday because traffic or whatever set my course of the day off the clock, then a couple of things are put into play that are now stressful and not positive. One, I don't believe in the sense of time. Obviously, we need a clock to coordinate and collaborate on things, but like in the big sense, time doesn't exist. So now my routine is offset and I'm off the clock, so to speak.
Right.
And now I feel bad. And so now I've put into motion a whole chemical chain reaction in my gut and in my brain, and my day has become harder to enjoy because I feel bad because I didn't do something that I'm supposed to do because that's what my daily routine says I'm supposed to do. And then that in turn makes it hard for me to be productive and reliable and self-aware and creative, as opposed to I'm those things no matter what, and I can be those things without a routine to reel me in and keep me on track. Because if I get knocked off that track, then I'm floundering. But if I can wake up every day and be those things that I need to be without any kind of like structure and still get shit done and still feel good about myself, then what have I lost? I don't think I've lost anything. You know, if anything, I've gained freedom. And that's why I'm sitting here having this conversation with you.
Yeah.
And I've already booked some gigs and generated some cash flow on just a seemingly random schedule. But like, you know, I don't know if I can turn my camera around, but I'm looking at the ocean right now while I'm looking and talking it to you. It's sitting in the sun, and I'm not behind a computer, and it's not costing me anything, except it would be costing me a whole lot if I was in an office behind my computer having to do the things that I need to do to generate income.
Yeah, I love it. I think that if people can begin to understand that time is something that's used to constrain us, not only in the way we live, but who we are. Like it's this man-made limiting idea that puts us into a box and makes us controllable. It's like, you know, I've been thinking a lot about this idea of time, like, and how much better the world might be if we just broke all the clocks. I'm thinking about writing a science fiction novel. We just break all the clocks. You know what I mean?
There you go. I would read that because the like what you're saying, I 100% agree with. But also, to add to what you're saying, it also just doesn't exist. It's made up.
Right.
So like, which I only say not to disagree with you, but actually to bolster your claim. Like that further proves what you're saying is right, in that it's used to something that doesn't exist is used to control us.
Yeah.
Like, to me, that's more powerful than just saying time is used to control us.
Yeah.
You know, so I only say that to back you up.
Yeah, you know, there's something to be said about the eternal now. Like that's the only time that exists. And if you look back at any history book you've ever written or maybe if you look back at any history book that you've ever read, it's only an account of someone's opinion of what happened. You know, there's no true real history that happened. And so it's just an opinion of what happened. The only only thing tangible is right now.
Right. Okay. So earlier you asked me about perspectives and how you know the idea of them is interesting to you.
Yeah.
And what you're saying now about history being written, right? So I always think of it this way, like perspective really is both real to the person that has theirs, but unreal to other people to see that person's perspective. Meaning, like if I stand up right now on the earth on my feet, there's not a single person that can get my perspective in that particular spot, because only one person can stand in one spot at one time. So everything else might be close, but it's still a deviation away from that original perspective. Nobody can stand exactly where I'm standing and have the exact same perspective. They can stand next to me. They can even like kind of lean into me and get their eyes just below mine. but it's always a deviation from mine. It's never going to be the same one. It's impossible.
And that's both the tragedy and beauty of life right there, because no one will ever see what you have, and no one will ever see what no one will ever see what you see, and no one will ever see what you see. It's at the same time beautiful and tragic, right?
Yeah, that's it. And like, you look at people that do podcasts and interviews like this, and you go into the comments section, which you should never do, but you do it just because you can't. It's like you can't help but look, and there's going to be the people that are like, this guy's full of shit. This guy's telling lies. This guy's misleading people. But like the reality is like I'm not doing any of that. I'm just like speaking from the place I'm standing, and I'm not telling you that I'm right and you're wrong, or that my way is right and your way is wrong, or any of that. And there's a lot of people that do the same thing and get shit for it. But it's like that's not the problem. It's like the awareness of what is really happening versus what you think is happening. That's where maybe you're having some static. Because I don't have it, and I don't have any with you doing what you do.
Yeah, this brings up this. I've been reading a lot of this guy Marshall McLuhan, who is like a philosopher in the 50s, and he spoke about the different mediums in which we learn. And he talked about how language, specifically when we became more literate, when books became, when the Gutenberg, the printing press came to be, it fundamentally changed the way we see the world. And he talks about how, reading a book and reading the letters on that book create this new thing of exact repeatability. And like, it's a crazy thing to think about, but just think about the concept of exact repeatability. Like that takes away the images. It takes away the nuance. It takes away perspective. If I can give you a book and you can repeat exactly what I said, you can say the same words, but you can never say it in the same context. You can never say it in the same position. And like, he just talks about how from that point forward, we just deviated off a course because information and knowledge was never supposed to have the exact repeatability. It was supposed to be something that I told you and you mowed it over in your head and then you came up with an idea about it. And now we get into the concept of time. Now we get into the concept of the cardboard cutouts that we were talking earlier, or the studio gangsters, or the studio music, and this profound pornographic idea of exact repeatability. You know what I mean? It's like a virus in a way.
Yeah. So like that goes back to like my whole thing about just not really giving a shit about recording records anymore.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
Like bring your own recorder to the show. And,
I love it.
And like if 20 people did that, they can't all put their microphone in the same place, right? They've got to put it where they're feeling it.
Yeah.
So 20 people are going to go home with 20 different sounding recordings and have 20 different experiences, but it's theirs and they captured it. So it's not my version that I made that they're buying and taking home. It's their version, which is kind of cool.
Dude, that's fucking awesome. Are you kidding? Like that runs counter to every other person's like, hey, I don't want any cameras in here. I don't want anybody recording stuff. You're like, no, bring your own shit. Make your own album. Like that's so much better, Adam. Yeah, that's so much better.
That's yeah. So my next album, I don't know. You tell me, right? Like, I don't know what it looks like or sounds like, or I don't even know what the title is. You're gonna come up with your own.
That's so much better. That is such a better way to. It just gives me a better feeling about the person that's creating it. Like it's almost like you're co-creating with people.
Okay, and I don't know if we talked about this last time, but like one of my like mottos is creation, not competition, right?
Right.
Or cooperation and not competition. And so that's like a life philosophy for me. So I don't, and the gist of it is I don't need to compete with you to get mine. Like we can both get ours.
Yeah.
There's enough to go around. So like, yeah, like if that's how I'm making records now, is we're making them together. I think that's way cooler. And now, and so like, you know, one of the things that drives me crazy is like I'll walk into somebody's restaurant and they know who I am, or I'll walk into somebody's, you know, they're having an event and I'm there as a attendee and not like a performer. And they see you and they put on one of your songs that's on a record or CD or on Spotify or something, and they think you're going to be stoked. And it's like, yeah, it's kind of a cool nod, but it's also like it kind of drives me crazy. Like I don't want to hear it because I made it and I'm done. Like I'm on to the next thing. But if we're making records together where I'm just doing what I do and you're capturing it on a recording device because that's what stokes you out. Actually, I want to hear what your version of it is that you enjoy. Like, I want to hear that. That's way more interesting to me.
Yeah, that is interesting. I heard gosh, I forgot who it was, but there was an artist that came out and said, "Look, you can use any of my material, but if you make any money off it, like let's release it together." Like they kind of waived their copyrights a little bit, and they were like, "Yeah, look, here, use all my stuff. Just put me in there, and you know, if you make over this amount, let me know." You know, I was like, "What a cool way to kind of re-release, you know, the creative spirit a little bit." You know, I don't know. It's interesting to think about.
Yeah, and you know, that to me, like the things that I'm thinking about doing. Let this helicopter go by. The ways that I'm starting to think about it is because of the things that we have available to us, which very often when we have conversations about technology and phones and the internet, it's usually because it's created some kind of like chaos that we consider negative. But we have these things, so resisting them is only going to make me sick and stressed. But if I can accept them and then put them to use in a way that's like fulfilling and productive, like how do we do that? And for me as a songwriter, this is one way I can think of that I can do that, because everybody's got a really good camera and music studio in their pocket now.
Yeah.
You know? So, yeah, otherwise I'm just being I'm resisting what is otherwise. And that's not good for me.
No, I don't think it's good for anybody. The you know, on some level, resistance can build muscle, but resistance to something that can be a resistance to something that can help you sounds like getting old. You know what I mean?
Yeah, they're no different really at that point.
Mm.
You know, if it can help you and you're still resisting it, then like, yeah, you're still basically doing the same thing of not fulfilling or not giving nutrition to your soul, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. I think just having that concept of why am I resisting this thing that can help me? Like that's the world knocking on your door. Like, hey, I'm trying to help you. Why are you resisting this? You know? And it just gets louder and louder until you do something.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's going back to talking about those patterns. And then you get stuck in those patterns and it gets easier and easier to not provide nutrition for yourself.
Right.
You know, one of the things that like that I hear people talking about is like the idea. I'm kind of losing my train of thought, but like I've forgot what I was going to say or how I was going to say it, but
Talk about the patterns that people present for themselves.
oh,
And
right. So you're right. So people get into these patterns, and they continue to do things that are not contributing to their wellness.
right.
They might even be in the middle ground where it's not really harmful, but it's also not helping. But they're expending their self on it, and so it's. I see the idea that we are confusing doing what feels right with we're doing what feels comfortable. And that's where that song that started this whole thing off kind of is coming from, right? Like it's we're not dying of old age, we're dying of self-imposed lifestyle choices and limitations and poisons, and a lot of those poisons we create inside of us because our body and our being is fighting back against lifestyle choices or thoughts. Negative thoughts can kill you eventually.
Yeah,
Right?
I would venture to say that that's what kills most people.
Yeah, and that's what that song is really talking about. Like, we're creating these chemical poisons inside of us with how we're living and thinking, and how we're like our relationship with the world around us.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it makes
So
sense, man.
that one little 2.5 minute song that only has like a verse and a chorus, it's like 2 paragraphs. That's what we've been talking about for almost an hour and a half. But it's not. We're not like, it's fulfilling. It's not small talk, and
Yeah.
that's kind of where I'm at with things. I I have more to give, so I want more around me too. Like, I want more coming back. That's fulfilling. Like, I don't want to waste my time or my breath on things that aren't.
Yeah. Meaning and purpose. And there's a saying that I've been hearing quite a bit, and it says the deeper in you go, the bigger it gets. And it's kind
And I,
of interesting to think about.
well, and you were, when we were texting about this show, you were like talking about living your authentic self,
Yeah.
and kind of just doing it on your own terms and not really giving a fuck about
Yeah.
the 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 ideas or the limitations that other people might impose on you doing, living your life that way. Um, Part of the reason I'm able to do that is because I can spend quality time in silence with myself. And if you can't do that, it's really hard to do the other stuff. You know, I it's hard for me to sit in a room and do that because I feel like that's not natural. It's much easier to sit by the beach and just sit in silence, but you're still practicing, you know, you're still practicing something that I feel like, for me, I need to practice that. And if I have to do it in a room with four walls and all the distractions of, comforts around me like TVs and my phone, I can still turn those things off and just meditate. Like, I'm pretty good at it. I can do it every day. And I don't feel like I'm good at it in the sense that when I do it, it's always like at a high level, but I'm good enough at it that I can do it every day. And that, to me, that's more important.
Yeah, I think it speaks volumes of being comfortable with who you are and the things that you've done. Because a lot of people, and you know what, people at home or listening to this, you can try this. Have a conversation with somebody and don't take the step when you're supposed to dance. You know what I mean by that? Like, just pause in a conversation and watch how uncomfortable somebody gets. Like, they'll start having anxiety a little bit. They just want to fill the air with conversation or words, even though you're just being quiet. And it's like
Yeah.
little exercise like that. You're like, whoa, look how powerful silence is.
Well, and not only that, but how valuable space is. Not every little space needs to be filled. You know, if you don't believe me, come watch people drive in California where there's 3 lanes and like people are trying to fill every hole with their car. It's the same with words and same with thought, and it's the same with like um, relationships and presence around people. Like you can tell the people that are the least conscious are the ones that talk the most a lot of times because they can't stand the silence. Embrace it. And again, I'm not judging anybody. If that's how people are in that setting, that's great. But I'm probably not gonna participate, or I'm gonna get up and go do something else, and that should be okay too. You know?
Yeah. I think sometimes, isn't it interesting that we have somewhere along the lines decided that money is free speech, and if you fill things with words, so too do you fill things with money. You fill that void with money or things, like look at this thing that I got. Well, that takes away that space, and now I don't have to worry about that because I'm this. It's interesting.
Oh yeah, yeah. Or like, I had a relationship with but like the idea that because I have more money or I'm worth more money, my voice is more important than your voice. My opinion matters more. Even if the subject in which you're talking about, that person has less experience and knowledge of, they get to control that space more because they have more money, and that's how that space becomes a toilet. At least,
Yeah.
At least that's one way. But that is certainly a thing with some people, and whatever. That's cool. That's they have a right to live and experience their own thing, but I'm not going to participate, and I have that right.
Absolutely. And I think that it's in rebellion to these ideas that we don't like, where a lot of great art is created, because there's some things that, and I think art or creativity is one of them, that speaks louder than any one voice. Creating something is like a symphony that drowns out the mundane, monotone voice of one loud voice. Does that kind of make sense?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
Yeah, I feel like we've kind of we're on the same page. We're kind of saying the same thing at this point.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree.
But it's real. That's those are the things that, to me, those things are real. That's what I'm seeing around me, and like those are the things that I'm trying to like learn how to coexist with and like get along with. Because even though I don't subscribe to those things, if being around those things or people that subscribe to those things brings out a reaction in me, even if I don't express it, if it's internal and it's a negative reaction, then it's not them that are causing it, it's me. Right? Because as far as I'm concerned, like nobody can make me feel or think a certain way. No one. It's my choice.
Yeah.
So if we're living in a world and that includes those other things that I don't have a taste for, I still have to learn how to like maintain who I am in the presence of it. And that's what I'm working on now. That's my job for me.
One of the most heart-wrenching but also funniest statements I've ever heard is, "See what you made me do?"
Right.
You know what I mean? Like, no, yeah. I didn't do that, but it's just someone blaming something, man. It's so funny to me and sad, because it's usually the sign before there's some abuse that happens, but I guess that's the the dark comedy that makes life worth living sometimes is found in those moments. But
But I
Adam
mean,
Lopez, yeah, what do you got?
yeah, I was gonna say, but the flip side of that is I remember saying those things at some point in my life too, and in that moment, I it was real to me because I felt it, even though it wasn't real. It was real to me, and so that's where coexisting and being empathetic are necessary. They're vital, but they're also really difficult because it's something. One of the kisses of death, I feel like, as a human, is to be like seeing is believing, because some of this shit you can't see but it's real, and I know because I feel it. So yeah, see what you made me do. Like now I'm detached from that, but I try
Yeah.
to be empathetic because I know what that feels like, because I at some point have said those same words.
Yeah, I've seen it as I've grown older, and I like the idea of seeing, because I think when you see people acting a certain way and you can recognize it, what you're really seeing is yourself and how you react. Because the only way you can recognize something in somebody else is because you've done it, whether it's a good thing or whether it's a bad thing. And if you can get to that point and see people as another version of yourself, or as a mirror, as I like to say, hey, this person's showing me how ridiculous I am. Hey, this person's showing me some cool things about myself. Hey, this person's showing me, what I could be like or what I used to be like. But if you can get to see the people and the environment around you as a mirror, it can really change your life, I think.
Yeah, yeah, and uh, that's that's another one of those like things, or those mottos that I try to implement, um, just like moment to moment. There's a bunch of them, and
Yeah.
the world around me is a mirror. Um, Getting beyond things being good and bad, or right or wrong, or just always being present. Like those are all just little reminders that I'm always constantly trying to to not just remind myself of, because that's redundant to what I just said, but put into practice. And that's
Well put.
you know that's work. But what else am I going to do if not that?
Yeah, it's I mean, I think those are good examples of trying to live a life worth living. It's so hard to be in the present because there's constantly things that are pulling us back and trying to trap us in the past or make us worry about the future. But if you can just find those little totems that allow you to be here, whether it's seeing people as a mirror, or finding a moment to laugh about the pure absurdity that you're even here right now. You know what I mean? Like there's little things that you can do to
Yeah,
bring you right back.
yeah.
So
I mean, I think we just solved the puzzle of life.
well, that's why we have to
Just
have
like
these
that.
conversations, my friend.
Yeah,
Everybody, you're welcome.
right. But and that's again goes back to like the small talk thing. Like, think about how much time can be wasted talking about the weather, that
Right.
like it's silly. And there's nothing that's inherently wrong with it, but I'd rather be doing this.
Yeah, me too.
Like nothing, you know, like, and it's little things like that can just drive you crazy. They won't ruin my day, but they'll still get me, and I'll just be like, like, you know, it's a hot one out today or something like that, right? And that's like, I don't know, is it? Like, I think it's great. You think it's hot? I think it's great. I think it's perfect. So now what? Like, what are we talking about? We're not talking about anything, Like, I'd rather do this. And so far, we're an hour and 40 minutes in, and that other conversation was only like 6 seconds. But I'd rather spend an hour and 40 doing this than 6 seconds doing that, because
Yeah.
this is way more rewarding.
Yeah, I agree. And I think that this is the antidote to that. And I want more of it to happen. I think people are thirsty for it. I think
Yeah,
that I do. I think that all these fillers are just ways for people to continue to live a life of depression or anxiety. And they're secretly, when someone says the weather's hot outside, I think they're desperately looking for communication. And if you can see it from that angle, I think your answer to that is a great thing to say. Like, no, it's not. It's cold. Like almost shocking someone into an argumentation is better than just that small talk, right?
Yeah, yeah,
No,
for
it's not.
sure. I mean, and I don't think that's the best, but it is
It's
better,
not.
for sure.
It's something. It's
But
something. There's
it's
emotion
something.
in it.
But yeah, you made me think of something else too with what you just said. And again, I'm starting to lose my train of thought. But yeah, I don't remember what I was thinking. You said something that sparked a thought, and I lost it. Maybe it'll come back to me.
Yeah. Well, here's a comment that our friend Sarah Ann put up. She's saying, let me see if I can put it up on the board here. Okay. So Sarah Ann says maybe they are trying to get out, but it's not so natural for them. And that could be it too. Not everybody has the ability to, maybe they're really introverted, and the way they're trying to break the ice is just saying, hey, the weather's hot out there. You know what I mean? Maybe we're being too hard on them, Adam.
Yeah, and that's what I'm saying. I'm not trying to say it from a point of like judgment or like you're wrong, I'm right. I'm just saying like that's an example of a way where like it sparks something that I have to work on. It's not about them. I'm talking like the judgmental part or like the critiquing. I'm not critiquing them.
Mm-hmm.
What I'm saying is like that's a critique of my weakness or like my lack. I'm lacking something that is having trouble being empathetic to that. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
Like that's what I'm trying to get at is like I'm not trying to dog that person. I'm saying like I got some holes in my game, and that's one of them.
Right. And so Sarah also says, look, I'm surrounded by negativity. And I think that if you are surrounded by negativity, then you have to be your own positivity at that point in time. And, maybe that means getting outside and going for a walk. Or what do you think, Adam? What do you do if you're surrounded by negativity? Yeah, go ahead.
I don't see that's of the same conversation we were just having, but it's like it's the other side of it. Like somebody small talking me about the weather and me getting irritated, that's me. So similar but different. Being surrounded by negativity is like that's also me. I'm not surrounded by it. I am it, and I need to change my thoughts, and I need to change my perception of what's around me, or I just need to remove myself from my environment. And that's a little like that truth is a little harder to swallow than the other one because it's taking responsibility for something that's kind of uncomfortable. But that's how I see it, and that's how I deal with it. So I'm not pointing the finger at Sarah, but like if you're going to ask my version or my opinion of that, it's on me.
I've heard the quote before that like attracts like, water seeks its own level. And that's both good and bad. Because if you are the reason, or if you are attracting things in your life that are negative, then you could flip that switch and attract things in your life that are positive, right? It's just a matter of flipping one little angle on that. And maybe that's, for me, when I have found myself in pretty negative spots in my life, it's usually I'm either trapped in the past, which is, I heard that the definition of depression is being trapped in the past, and the definition of anxiety is being trapped in the future. And so when I find myself surrounded, yeah, well, it makes sense, right? Sorry. I mean, if you're either beating yourself up for the past, and maybe this is part of it, Sarah, maybe you're beating yourself up for something you did in the past, or someone did to you in the past, or you're worried about what's going to happen in the future. But the truth is, you cannot control either one of those things. And I bet no matter where you are right now, if you're not getting punched in the face, or, you're not in the midst of a huge trauma, then right now, everything's okay. At this moment, everything's okay. And if you can begin there, you can begin to branch out after that. It's just a matter of recentering yourself on some level. But
yeah, that's my version of it. And for Sarah, maybe that's not like what she wants to hear. I don't know. I'm just saying, like, as an example, like maybe that's coming off as like pointing the finger, or just not a positive solution to a negative situation. But to me, that's how I see things. So like, if I catch myself saying I'm surrounded by negativity, I'm not trying to change what's around me. I'm trying to look inside and try to figure out why I see negativity. Because one, I don't, is it negative, or is it just how I see things? Because do we see things as they are? Do we see things as we are? And I tend to think we see the world around us. Our perception of it is what our perception of ourselves. So if I think everything around me sucks, it's because I'm having an issue with myself.
and sometimes, I honestly believe that our biggest tragedies in life can become our greatest gifts. And that I mean that because when you're surrounded by the worst things ever, like you have to find a way to get the fuck out of there. Like you have to find out what is it that's keeping me here. And usually that pit of self-loathing or whatever, if you don't live there, you can find some real fertile soil there and be like, whoa, you know what? You know why I'm doing this? Because of this. And then you find out, like, holy shit, I do that. I need to stop doing that. But I think that our greatest tragedies, and maybe not at the moment, and it may take years to get through your greatest tragedies, and you may have to do, 7 grams of mushrooms to figure it out. But the truth is, once you figure out what it is that's really dogging you, you can begin to overcome it. And it can even become the foundation for you to build a rocket ship on and explode out of there. But we have to have them, man.
Yeah, I mean, if you're not learning anything while you're living, then what's the point? And so all those,
yeah.
If you can kind of, to me, if I can get beyond positives and negatives as far as judging situations or people, then it's all what I choose it to be. It all has the potential to be a lesson, and it all has the potential to turn into something that is like a source of energy for me, positive energy, even the bad stuff.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. Absolutely. Well,
that's just me. What do I know?
Well, I think you know a lot, man. You're someone that I look up to in a lot of ways, man. And you've always been an incredibly authentic person to me. And I love the fact that we can be apart for so long, but our conversations always end up in an area like this that's fruitful, and it's not superficial, and it's deep, and it's inspiring and fun. And for those that are watching right now, check out Adam Lopez music, because I think a lot of this conversation is what drives him, and it's what goes into his artwork. And I think it's awesome, man. So before I let you go, though, Adam, where can people find you, man? What do you got coming up?
Adam Lopez Music. I have a calendar on there. There's a handful of like NorCal, Central California dates that just went up in the last like 2 days. After that, I don't know. Like I'm booking shows now, pretty much every day. They're coming up after being kind of, like I said, kind of retired for a couple of years. So because I'm just now kind of coming out of my cave, the dates aren't piled on the calendar like they normally are. It takes a couple months to kind of get them backlogged a little bit. But I'll be in like Sacramento, Monterey, kind of that zone, Santa Cruz in July. And then after that, I don't know. I've got a few offers to go like towards Texas, towards Colorado, kind of the usual. Like my usual zone is like the diamond of like Colorado, Texas, and then Tennessee and California. I've gone to other places quite a bit, but that's like the main zone. So yeah, it's pretty much changing like on the daily where people, are inviting me back out. So
Yeah,
the,
man, that's awesome.
the website's the easy way to keep track of everything, but Adam Lopez Music is pretty much all the social medias too.
Okay.
Yeah, it's pretty much the same for everything.
All right. Awesome. Well, hang on a second. I'm going to hang up with the audience, but I want to talk to you real briefly afterwards. And awesome conversation, brother. I really appreciate it. To the folks listening out there, to Sarah, to Steve, to Johan, we love you guys, man. Thanks for participating and everything. And we will
Yeah,
talk to you
thanks, y'all.
guys soon. Check out the links. Aloha.
Peace.